self-absorbed and clueless crickets is what we seems to be continuously. And I don't quite get it. I just sit here just absent. I've got no more thoughts beyond that at some point. I got lots to say, but I wonder how much farther it will take us if we're not going to respond with our own action. For those of you on Prodcast, we hope we prod you into action. BTW RLM 191 this week. It's been an interesting week. I'm not quite sure what happened. It looked like I went through 2 days twice. I watched every day go by, but it seemed like I was always behind. Didn't get to post my Spreaker promo, if you will. We can promo it out. I usually do that on Tuesday, and I didn't get that done till Thursday. So, and as I say that, thank you, Grammy Mary, for your contribution to support the Spreaker line, which we have like lots. I got so many I can't keep track anymore. In fact, I can't keep track of a lot. I'm noticing it's getting very much more difficult to keep up with all that really needs to be done. I'm forced into certain places and can only do so much that I'm noticing, what I thought was, if it was a fear coming on us, is coming on us. There's just not enough people stepping up in the right way. And I'm not talking in the right way for me. I'm saying for them to do what they need and ongoing. And so it's kind of been amazing to watch. I'm looking now at a complete society that's essentially functionless. It's functionless against its own self, to protect itself, and against its own interests. I just still can't get the basics here, that people can't figure out how to make a simple book report, essentially. The responses that we need to give are book reports. And contrary to a lot of the ideas that seem to be floating around, that what I'm suggesting is you use the system to beat the system, as I'm saying, you find the failures of that system which keep it from working. And unless you can be a witness to that and make the book report on succinctly stating that in the proper place, everyone who's a criminal will continue being the criminal. And what I've found, and I don't know that there's anybody else that's offered any other solution to what I've been suggesting to do, and I'm looking for it. I keep telling you, so markonthebeast@yahoo.com. Don't do it in the chat room, because I'm not going to look there. I'm not looking there now. It's too distracting. But no one offers a solution contrary. Oh, no, not even a solution. I don't even know if we work solutions. What we're doing is we're in the battle, and so it's an ongoing thing. No one offers anything different than what I've been saying you need to do in this time while we see the system has gone off the rails, and it was up to us not to let it off, and now we have the job to put it back. They're just complaining about it, claiming how much you know, how much you think you know, inventing mythical philosophies will not actually cut any of this. And I don't know if you've all noticed, all those people that do all these things have done zero to stop the problem. Zero. And so I came to offer something to do that actually interferes with this ramrodding, this criminality against us. And I really didn't understand, I thought everybody had the sensibilities I did. And apparently nobody does. And I'm saying that maybe in the absolute. Because it's come to my attention in lots of different ways over the last few weeks. And all the things I've been saying, no one really listens to what I'm saying on how to do something. And then they take their prejudice and try to apply what I'm saying to what to do. And then they have varying degrees of success, and most of it is not really so successful, more than to see that you're up against a pretty formidable foe, and now you've got some wounds that I've been saying you don't need to suffer in your addressment of where everything's gone wrong and how to at least stop it, while you work also to bring out the better plan, which was to really just go back, my focus is on property rights. I hear lots of people complaining that they're going to be losing the property rights in the future and don't raise a finger to stop it today. Don't raise a finger to jump in where they can to cause a question. And then I see the other problem. As I told you, I'm kind of like a guy with a gun. I hand you, a child, the gun, and I say, go do something with it. And first thing you do is you shoot the cat or your foot or something. You don't quite get it. And so I'm a little disgruntled at this point, but I can't do more. I have to put up with what I have to put up and watch everyone fall on their face like they've been falling on their face and vilify me and criticize me without another thought in their brain, because that's all they got to do, I suppose. And it's as simple as learning how to do a formal book report and sending it to the right guy or woman. Now, so I've been kind of wondering, where do we all go? I went through school. I learned certain things. They apparently gave me just enough to be a pain. And I took that little baton they handed me and made myself a major pain. Applied myself to the problem. It's not something I wanted to do. It's something I realized I was forced to do. Because we're living in an occupied country, occupied territory, and occupied on many and multiple dimensions. And you can go whether physical or esoteric and as much as you want, and you will find that it's there. And so I find and try to pick certain communication styles. I'm trying to adjust, to try and get to people to understand that they have to take important action, not just think they know, but you actually have to know enough to apply in the proper way. It's not just applying. I told you the knowledge is not power. You learn this really quickly. Knowledge is not power. You can know everything in the universe, and if you don't know how to apply what you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get traction. The gears don't mesh. The springs don't wind. The evil doesn't go away. The criminal doesn't stop. They ask you two questions, you get the wrong answer, the first one, and then you follow it up with a second wrong answer. They know you don't know. For all you think you know. And one of the prejudices, you think you know, so you spout off all you think you know. And you don't even have a clue. And I see this over and over. And I'm not judging, I'm telling you the fact of what I see going on. So we're behind the woodshed, and there's some hard lessons to learn. And I've been hoping beyond hope. It's not the ultimate lesson that you learn that you really don't have any rights, that you thought you did, that you thought you had a better way to say it. And I'll tell you something, you have a better philosophy to live, and you're not acting in the proper way to impose that, because that's what you'll have to be doing, is imposing it. And then convincing people to change to your way, you're not getting anywhere. Those that have the plan, those that have the strategic plans, we see these things all of the time. The goals and the objectives, you see them printed everywhere. The global goals and plans are beating you. And you're going to complain until you don't have a breath in your body to complain. But in trying to figure out where did all my classmates, if you will, that I looked around as a little guy thinking that the world was a wonderful place, and it is, but it's not, is also when man eats man, dog eat dog, monkey fights monkey. That's not so cool. And because of that, we've had to set up rules for ourselves because we're not so cool. And until we get to come to terms with that, I don't think we're going to really understand. We can have higher aspirations for ourselves, but there's a world out there that doesn't care for that, doesn't listen to that at all. There are people out there that have no morals at all, and I say morals because there has to be a higher plane of awareness to be able to function this way. They have none. And justify the means, whatever they feel they want, they got. The world is their oyster, and they're going to eat it the way they want it. And if you're not there to stop them, they don't care if they run you down. If they're not there to stop them, you get run down. And so I've been trying to figure out why all the people that were in my classes and stuff learned all the same stuff I did, and I came here and, okay, we're not going to make the same decisions, but at some point, the criminality against you has to become to a point where you have to analyze, or at least there's someone looking in, you're either agreeing to the criminality against you, or you're going to fight it. And so that's where I'm at. I'm already way beyond the fight, the engagement, and I'm attempting to find every proper way to do that. And one of the ways you do is you take out the authority that pretends to be the authority. So that's not using the system against itself. That's saying that authority who claims authority, who doesn't want to be found out as not an authority, has made certain stipulations how it's going to perform, and you go in to find where it's not. And in every instance that we can do this, we stop that system. In other words, we've stopped the oppression against us from getting any further. Does that mean that we've stopped the oppression? Well, no, and that's where other people will jump in and say, well, then what you say don't work. And that's the improper attitude. You're just looking for an excuse. So I've been trying to figure out, where do we all go? I mean, if I have this view and I think I can write a report. I've had to train myself maybe to do better and write better ones to the point where I think my record, given I want to tell you it all, would prove out that I'm coming along pretty well and probably top of my class. As I said, I learned early on I wasn't going to be one of those 100%er people. I wasn't going to be a 4.0, but darn it, I'll be right close up behind. I'll be breathing down those guys' necks all the time. And I did. And it seems to be how I go through things and do things in my life even till now. I tried to figure out and been looking around what's happened to us as a society. What's happened to all of us that had these ideals that got stomped on that decided now not to be able to be functional to stop it. And so these little things pop up. And conjecture, I know, but it's when you start looking at what it affects, you understand that these are also licenses by government given to harm you. My thought is you better be paying attention, and you better start becoming a lot more adept at understanding what's going on. And as I try to show you, you need to see what's transparent. You need to see how the dupe is happening to you, and you need to not succumb to that. But at some point, your ability to do any of that is going to be taken away from you, and more importantly, not you, your little ones, and their little ones. Now, we come up with a report. I think I got this from Gary L. And this report has been pulled from its first publication, but I wanted you to see it, and you'll see it in the Blogcaster. We might, again, one of the constructions that have been made up around us is to deplete our abilities, and one of the way they can do that is in controlling your behavior outside of your ability to control it yourself within your autonomy, your biology. And we see now a report came out, and again, the official record was pulled. I don't even 12 hours. It was gone. I was able to capture it up someplace else. So you may want to, those of you that are interested in this, how we are being chemically or biologically controlled. Remember the ant colony study, the epigenetic environmental constraints that can be placed on you without your knowledge. You just start working and acting different. I've told you before that pretty soon you're not going to know how to do what I'm telling you need to do now, and it'll be because you didn't do it now. And your little ones will forget it. They're not capable. We now see a report of a study that was made as Vaccination and Health Outcomes, a survey of 6 to 12-year-old vaccinated and unvaccinated children based on mothers' reports. And so this is going to be one of those studies that has a small footprint of, it's not necessarily going to be something that you want to rail with, sort of wave the flag, but you want to take critical note of this because of what they find here, even and despite the nature of the small focused group that they chose, which I found was interesting as well. And I have not done any more analysis on the reason, because there's some reason why they did it this, and why they went to who they went to, and the mothers of those people, those little ones, to come up with this study that showed a very high probability of problems, which are what I've been telling you, interfering with your ability to deal with the real world. And so you will be dealt with because you can't do for yourself. It's a biological and chemical incapacity being built into you and your little ones. Abstract to this, it's very short. You just take it take this as I say it, because I don't think we can find the actual report. This is a reprint. It is consistent with the first reprint from the journal that it was published and then pulled from. Background: vaccinations have prevented millions of infectious illnesses, hospitalizations, and deaths among U.S. children. Not your children, but the United States government's children. Understand what they're saying there? I know most people dismiss this, but I'm telling you that when they use the word children, they're talking about a status, and that's not your offspring. It's not your son or your daughter. They have co-opted your property in your son and daughter, and you didn't step up to claim the distinction. And so we look very carefully at what they're doing to us in this study, but maybe these medical people don't understand it. I do. I certainly see it over and over. For whatever anybody wants to challenge me on that, bring your study and show me, because I haven't seen anybody that can do it. That we're dealing in statuses all the time. The United States government is doing what it's going to do with those statuses, and in that regard, it's created the status. You name a thing, you own it, you control it, and it's yours. Why do you think a miner names his mining claim? He stakes out the land and then he names that claim. Why? You got to think about the actual fact of what's going on here. Going back to the abstract, They're making the opening statement that vaccinations have prevented millions of infectious diseases. I'm sure that that's happened, but we're looking at the problem areas that are not being focused on, and this study will show you the effects that are not addressed and not able to be seen may be far more widespread, that you all need to pay attention. Yet the long-term health outcomes of routine vaccination programs remain unknown. Studies have been recommended by the Institute of Medicine to address this question. The specific aims of this study were to compare vaccinated and unvaccinated children on a broad range of health outcomes and to determine whether an association between vaccination and neural development disorders, they call NDDs, if any, remains significant after adjustment for other measured factors. The design was a cross-sectional survey of mothers of children educated at home. The methods: homeschool organizations in 4 states, Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Oregon, were asked to forward an email to their members requesting mothers to complete an anonymous online questionnaire for vaccination status and health outcomes of their biological children ages 6 to 12. I need to interject. Remember the 2 words here, status and outcomes. Status and outcomes. This is the view from this is a particular view. They're looking now, taking data to do an analysis on the outcomes of the imposition of a crime against you. But going back to the study statements, the results. A total of 415 mothers provided data on 666 children, of which 261, or 39%, were unvaccinated. 39% of this study group was unvaccinated, and they were homeschooled. I found that very interesting what they're doing here. Nonetheless, we're going to get some very powerful information on a risk that you may or may not understand is going on, that we have posited for quite a long time, that's been denied by those that give license to the vaccine makers against any liability, which should have told us a ton already. But here it is, vaccine going on. Vaccinated children were significantly less likely than unvaccinated to have been diagnosed for chickenpox and pertussis, but significantly more likely to have been diagnosed for pneumonia, otitis media, allergies, and NDDs, which include or defined as autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and or a learning disability. So vaccinated children are more likely to have those. After the adjustment, the factors that remained significantly associated with NDD were vaccination of the numbers that were 3 to 6 to 6.6 times greater for vaccinated children than those not in that group area. I won't go through all the numbers. They're over broadcast. It gets pretty eye-rolling. But at any rate, you'll read these for yourself. In a final adjusted model, vaccinations but not preterm birth remained associated with these neural disorders. While the interaction of preterm birth and vaccination was associated with a 6.6-fold increase odds of obtaining this disability by vaccination. Conclusion. In the study based on mothers' reports, and vaccinated had higher rate of allergies and NDD than the unvaccinated. In this study based on mothers' reports, the vaccinated had a higher rate of allergies and NDD than the unvaccinated. What did they say the NDD was? But neural development disorders. This is again, the homeschool. These are the people that would not actually engage in the system so well. I thought this was an interesting study group that they're going after to look at. I assume that they felt they were going to find something different here. But they're finding out that vaccinated children, and I suppose that's fair enough in general to speak to, but I don't think so based on their outcomes, have a higher incidence and odds of getting a neural development disorder. When I saw the allergies, it didn't occur to me till I read that how many people have you looked around that have allergies anymore? I mean, it's been increasing for anything. Then we find out inside the vaccines, there's things that cause the allergy to be created, and it's not by the vaccine, just by the technique. It's really the stimulants that they put in to cause your system to react. It's a poison that your body uses, that your body repels itself, fortifies itself against. Now, there's other ways to fortify that without using these poisons, but in fact, they use them. Vaccinations, but not preterm birth, remain significantly associated with neurodevelopment disorders after controlling for all other factors. However, preterm birth combined with vaccination was associated with an apparent synergistic increase in the odds of neurodevelopment disorders. Further research involving larger independent samples is needed to verify and understand these unexpected findings. Experts say, folks, unexpected, in order to optimize the impact of vaccines on children's health. And we're seeing the impact is good, folks. It's already 6 times. I don't doubt that they would want to increase that at some point over the time without understanding how they're going to do it. This, to me, was global governance in a way. The WHO, not the OWL, not the Rock Group, but the WHO, doing some influence here to figure out how they can cut out the homeschoolers to bring them back in. And then they found out they were unexpected findings of harm. So if you're pregnant and your doctor wants to get a vaccine, you need to get this study, even if it's been pulled. And then I also tell you, get your product insert and say, okay, together with this and this product insert showing these things are possible, I don't think that I want to chance this with my little one. So you get the broadcaster entry, you can see it. I've also included, I had to go back, I'd forgotten about I had to ask what they were, these OR numbers and these, CI numbers and all. You had to figure out, it's a code, a medical code for figuring out things. That the OR was odds ratios and CI is confidence intervals and p-values, and it's what you do in statistics. So we're back to statistics. Statistics say, anyway, you can go through a little sheet I found. It's a beginner's guide to interpreting odds ratios, confidence intervals, and p-values, which I use to go back and it's a little test on how you go through it so you can figure out for yourself when you're seeing a code in some of these reports, how to interpret it. And you need it to understand what the numbers are so you just don't glaze over, and that puts your mind into what they're telling you. And you understand that this is no joke, what they're telling you. This is just not some numbers out there, even statistical. And so here's a danger. What am I bringing this up for? When I see a whole society that suffers allergies, that suffers an ability to understand what I'm saying, to suffer things and be able to function accurately, and it can be tied to neuro development disorders, and we know of the epigenetic, the immediate impact on us, not just our little ones, for the very same interferences with our functioning. I have to wonder if we're not have no ability to respond to this. We're getting very close to what I've been telling you. We're going to be in a day when we don't have the ability to respond. So whatever excuse you're making not to respond properly is your choice for your future not being able to pay attention. You will be the Alzheimer patient. You will be the Parkinson patient. You will be the dementia patient. You will be whoever you have been programmed to be by your reaction to these things that are now known by people who really pay attention, I assume, in the class that they used, that there's a distinct model difference that was unexpected, that needs further review. Not on just one particular thing. Oh, thimerosal causes autism. They've been shooting that down, and I told you they're doing that because they want you focused on it, and they want you all riled up because they got other things they know that are causing this. And now we have a first study that I would start to run with because it says so in the product insert anyway. Now we've got some numbers to attach to the problem, and your decision is, do you want your little ones, or those little ones you know about coming into the world, or yourself, to be interfered with in your ability to use your brain and your spirit to make decisions. So I want to particularly thank Gary L. for calling my attention to that, because I think this is between that epigenetic study about the ant colony that I reported on and this report, we're seeing that we can have real-time problems developing in the chemistry and biology that's being put on and licensed by government to a level of immunity. And again, if you don't take what I'm saying correctly and apply it in the right way, you get in the wrong arguments. They defeat you. I went through the WHO has a sheet of a pamphlet I went through a couple weeks ago, shows you how they're going to defeat you. If you know that method, you know how to show that they failed. So you're not using the system against itself. You're saying you're bringing a fraud and a deception to me. Here's how I'm identifying it. Until you can correct that, we move no further. Now remember, one of the caveats that I would hold out, and not all the vaccines, because a lot of them are no good, and we know there's a couple of different styles, ones that are kind of clean and ones that are not, that it may not be the vaccines themselves that are really the problem. It's the type of vaccine and how many that you get all at one time that you're pumping in, where your body's not able to resist it. And that's now been adjusted to my mind with the ant colony experiment that says even so, the epigenetic danger may be enough to pull back even so for people that are grown up. The adult insects that you all are. When I say that, does anybody get insulted? Do you laugh? Do you think about it? The government thinks you're an insect. You're a pest animal. The code is written. It's not my opinion. I just read the stuff. I read it. I don't read it now for a long time. I put a link in one of the chats, or both I don't remember the chats. I put the link over. It explains it's a page that's put on the website that explains the code. It's right there. If you didn't know where to go, it's right there. When I say adult, I'm speaking to you as the insect, that little cricket that the government and the people that are in government and those that have no morals at all or are immoral treat you. That you were required to respond. Interesting story here on these vaccines. I want you to see there's a broad spectrum damage that happens to levels that are multiple times greater than those that don't. Don't remember, don't forget, don't remember. Here, that's right, neuro-linguistic program. Don't remember. I told you and showed you in the Disney measles outbreak that it was the little ones that got vaccinated that were actually the vectors, the spreaders of disease, of that very disease. Why? How do we find that out? Months later, they did a DNA check, and the signature of the fabricated viruses was there and not the wild one. It had moved from the people that had been, the little ones that had been vaccinated into the ones that weren't. It didn't go wild from the wild into the herd. So if you don't start understanding how to delineate the facts of your life as a court case to be presented as evidence to somebody and then show how they have the burden to go beyond it, not you, you're missing what I'm saying. You're never going to get it. And you're just going to be a whiner down the road like I see lots of people doing. So we got quite a few steps to go here. It's not just the knowledge. It's learning how to properly assemble the knowledge and then properly attain the facts from the knowledge tells us we need to get. And not just the knowledge on the vaccines. I'm talking about the knowledge on the system that's coming to attack you. And so you're learning how they're going to come at you so you can respond to that attack to shut them down. And if you do it much better and well, you actually kill that part. And can't know for sure. Word back from us is that the work that we've been doing, I can just tell you, the work that we've been doing now is in the lips of other people so far from us. It's astonishing. People are talking like where they weren't talking like what the information that we have been providing. They were not using these terms and these phrases are now coming back to us from thousands of miles away. If I have any doubt that what we're doing is getting out, I know it is. I just would like to see more people acting on the things they need to do to protect them. And I'm showing you that there's a plan. There's been a plan to inject you or fortify the biology and or the chemistry around your life to control your ability to respond, and I'm saying you're in a foot race against that inability. And if you keep coming up with unsupportable objections to what I'm saying, you need to go look in the mirror and decide whether or not you've not been counter-affected and you are dysfunctional to the point that you're just kind of responding out of Out of your internal knowledge, you're not capable. You can fight that, but you're going to need to come to terms with that. As I commented to somebody showing me what happened in their endeavors to try and fight back, I said, you got to, and there were some errors done, some fatal errors, that I said you need to come not from the fact that you think you have rights and tell everybody about it, because no one believes it that's in the system. You have to literally come from the place that you have no rights. You have to know you have no rights, no remedies, no nothing, no property, until you can make the title connections, dot to dot, very close, how you have a certain thing. If people are missing this detail, and I'm seeing this a lot as well, and so I needed to say it. I don't know why I needed to say it, but if you think you have rights and you're approaching the system and talking about all the rights you have and then being beat down, that should have told you don't have those rights. And you should pull back. As I told you, don't jeopardize yourself. Learn that you have no rights, and then go find the ones that you can show in the black and white that you do have. That's why the mining law is so important to understand the how that gets done. We got title in our hands. It's a grant. It's a relationship. The government's not a sovereign. It's an obligation and duty to you. Then you got to protect, and you prove that in law. You just go to the black and white and list it. A single sentence can do it, not on and on tales and stories. If you approach your problem like you think you have rights, and you go spouting off to someone who's been told he has the authority or she has the authority to beat you down as long as you don't cooperate, you've missed what I've been saying. Absolutely missed it. So I'm telling you now, if you haven't heard it before, you have zero rights. Zero, zero, zero. Everybody will say that. I'm telling you that it's the fact. Then I'm telling you, now stop your whining and go find out the rights that you thought you have. They are there, but you have to find how they are stated in a list of facts and law that produces the fact. Otherwise, the system treats you as a status that it can beat down. And I suspect, because of a lot of people I thought were pretty bright and capable, and our dysfunction of a society, as I get down the road, I see no one can defend themselves this way, even though, I had to learn how this is done, so, I know that part, but I did learn it, so it's not impossible. It's not something you can't know. We may be the last generations to be able to, with this prior story, but this is the problem. We're getting close to that point when we're being imposed upon by the chemicals in our food, the chemicals in our air, the chemistry that's in anything we in touch and get involved with in the environment, the biology that's imposed upon us. Doesn't have to be through a vaccine. That epigenetic ant study, colony study, was you, folks. The adult insect that you was that study. That you are being changed right before your own eyes, and you probably will get to a point you don't know it. You will be spouting off all you know and all the rights you have, and all those rights didn't protect you from being destroyed right in front of your eyes. Which is why I'm trying to tell you now, you need to start understanding what I'm doing, what we do, and we need to do this in mass, each one of us. And a little side note, we're on some health things. I'll run to health and I'll run on to something else. The sugar-free products stop us getting slimmer. I've known this for a long time. I watched an ex-brother-in-law years and years ago. He kind of had a little bit of trouble with weight. He started drinking the new, they started coming out, I guess they were new at the time, the new sugar-free products, and that guy blew up like a balloon. He didn't understand it. I said, stop drinking that poison. I didn't even know anything about all this. I said, something's in there that's killing you. It's causing you to retain water. Sure enough, we start seeing that there's whole lots of problems with these sugar-free products. And these sugar-free products are a problem because now they're changing the name, like NutraSweet and things have different names. I think one of them is called Amino Sweet now. They make it sound like it's natural. It's not. Absolutely not, and they're still putting it in the food, and then they hide it under this label blocking laws and things that they put in, a proprietary product, proprietary ingredients and all this, that you have to start looking even closer. We now have another study that many people believe that synthetic sweeteners will help them lose weight, but it turns out that the common substitute for sugar actually blocks the function of an enzyme that is essential for preventing obesity. Okay, so we're looking at a very fundamental enzyme interference, and this is now getting us back into our gut fauna and flora, and keeping that healthy, and the enzymes that are created by the interaction of all this, and the enzymes are really the instruction engine for how other things get done. You interfere with one of those enzymes, and you interfere with the foundation of a chemical transformation your body needs, a transmutation even, that it'll destroy you simply that way, because it interferes with things that your body actually needs to do, and you think it's not, because you don't know. Now I want to bring this over from the artificial sweetener to how other things that you think are in your, that are in our food will do the same thing. They interfere with the enzyme creation and or interaction, and that stops a process in your body which over time, the wonderful machine your body is in rebuilding itself or keeping itself from being degraded, is interfered with. For some time, nutritionists have suspected that artificial sweetener, but folks, you have to understand, this is 30, 40 years ago. There was a suspecting that's never been looked at for all this time. And this is another thing I don't understand why. We watch this stuff happen and none of us steps up to stop it. Have suspected that artificial sweetener, often used as substitute for sugar in coffee or added as an essential ingredient to diet sodas, does not help people lose weight. However, scientists have struggled to understand why this is the case. Now, researchers from Massachusetts General Hospital have found a lead. The results of this study, if you think we know so much, folks, it's just now got a lead. They're on the hunt now. The investigative reporter is on it. The private eye is all over this one now. The results of their study on this subject was published in the Journal of Applied Physiology, Nutrition, and Metabolism. I'll get it out. Richard Hoden's team investigated a sweetener called aspartame with an EU ingredients code of E951, which should tell you the EU ain't so smart either. Codex Alimentarius pops up, but let's not go there. Along with the same aspartame, E962, and it is among the most common used sweeteners in the world. Do you know your sweeteners have numbers? Just another number. Food producers add aspartame to products and claim to contain zero sugar, such as soda drinks and sweets with bubble gum, ready-made dairy products, baked goods, folks, just listen. How are you going to know? And instant coffee. Well, they put all these things that were all your mixed up foods, these processed mixed up foods, they add this stuff. So how are you supposed to know in your baked goods or your dairy products, or there's others, that you're not getting these kinds of poisons? Why does aspartame not aid weight loss? We found that aspartame blocks a gut enzyme called intestinal alkaline phosphatase, IAP. IAP is produced in the small intestine. Quote, we previously showed this enzyme can prevent obesity, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome, a disease characterized by a combination of obesity, high blood pressure, metabolic disorder, and insulin resistance. So we think that the aspartame might not work because even if it's substitute for sugar, it blocks the beneficial aspects of IAP. So I'll stop reading there. Understand the serious problem, and we talked about your gut. Your gut instinct is actually your brain. You don't know about that, I guess, and when we get that interfered with, that also affects our thinking. So these two stories up front are ways to show us that it's no joke that they can interfere with our ability to understand. You will have a problem interfering with a problem understanding me because of the potential, the large potential that your function, your brain, your cognition is interfered with by these things. And I think I'm going here because I don't want to really take judgment on anybody. Because if I had to take judgment, I'd really be disappointed in us as people. And I have to go back and say, well, if we're this dysfunctional, we actually need people to beat down on us every time because we aren't that good at keeping good. And this is the problem I see. You either do it yourself or someone's going to do it for you. And so as long as we don't continue doing it right, that gives them the license to do it for us. And so anybody that's speaking liberty and freedom and free and all that stuff is just, you're barking up a tree that's a rotted tree. It's going to collapse on you one day. So again, chemistry can interfere with us. The evidence of this is now, more apparent decades after it ought to have been. Remember, these were put into the market before the tests. They didn't care to look at overall symptoms until just now. Why? Because a lot of you all did speak up on the vaccines. A lot of the mothers stepped up and said, hey, wait. They went to the homeschoolers because those are the people that were most vocal against it. You see at the end of the study, they want to use those to impact children. And my view of this is they want to do that so that they diminish your capacity to respond to these people that are essentially handpicked. As they come through school, all the monitoring goes on, they see who's going to be conducive, and they may get the better vaccine, so they have a better control, but they're also programmed by their training. Like I was suggesting to you, what we can identify as the conservation biologist is really just an advocate for your destruction. And they use the excuse of being a scientist, the cover, in order to do that, the authority. That's why best science is what is important in that system, because they want to give the impression they're doing something that is of real authority and objective basis, when in fact, the only way you're going to get someone that's speaking in those terms is one that has left his morals at the door, if he had any, and can only function and speak through the imposition that he's been allowed to work through. So these are a bunch of people that actually think they're doing well. They think they're doing good. And consider, that's the ones that were treated a little bit better because they were already going in the proper direction for presenting the agenda to us all. And if you don't respond against that in the proper way, you don't learn enough about what that thing is and how to, it's real simple to interfere with it. But you don't do that, and you think I have something that's wrong, and you don't offer a better offer of action. You're just a whiner and a pretender. It doesn't matter how long you go, what you do, what you say, how you excuse it. That's how you argue against me. Your argument means nothing until you come up with a better action. So I've been trying to offer the better action, and I get actually it's kind of been interesting. Since I've been doing that more directly, I've been getting lesser and lesser listenership, and I wonder what here we are. We're seeing this cause and effect of the pretender, the one that wants to claim that they're doing such noble work and they don't. And it has nothing to do about them. They're noble people, but they think and act wrong. And I say think and act wrong because if you don't, like I said before, until you come to the point when you finally realize you have no rights unless it's the ones you can prove. And what am I speaking to there but what happened in at least 1953 when the Bar Association overthrew the de jure governments of the people, substituted them for the Model Business Corporation Act, destroyed the pre-existing system for the new one and said, if you want protection, you got to come to us and fill out our paper. That's what the application is for. If you missed all that, then you're not going to understand what I'm saying either. You're not going to understand you're an occupied people. And so, in that transformation under international law, the occupier still has to recognize the laws prior that it can't change, and those that it can, it does over time. That's the other problem, is we have to identify whether or not the ones they've changed could be, and why I started to be focused on land disposal, because none of those can. Now they're trying, but where we come to witness, they're easily destroyed in their attempt. I don't know if you haven't heard much about the Klamath Fall Dam removal, have you? It's still sitting back there. They're still trying, but they're not going the way they did. Why? Because we came to witness that they're a crime, and we identified it as a war crime, and we identified it as an international treaty violation. But the only way you can do that is to understand the totality of what you're up against and how you respond. Because you can only respond properly through what you gave to respond through. And if you deny that, you got nothing. I told you started with nothing. If you don't take what you're offered in the wars and the weapons, and you don't show how they haven't fulfilled as an occupier the duties that they had to do, you will lose. And so I'm going to say one more time. I don't know. I said I was going to just kind of wash my hands of all this stuff because I'm just tired of watching people get hurt for no darn reason. I'm going to try one more time. And it ends up being something I told you already before, but let me point it out. It was sent back to me that there was this big new disclosure over this no DAPL nor DAPL thing. Audio tape says that they have evidence now that a tribe objected to the pipeline nearly 2 years before the lawsuit. And that was spread, I guess, far and wide. And I received the notice of this, that it was there, and I assume by the title, this was a championing the belief that because I said, I made a claim, that was the objection that preserves all the rights and does all my stuff that I'm supposed to do and justifies whatever I'm doing today. But, you know, as I can go from a title, a headline, I don't think many other people can. Because in these types of things, when you're referring to the term objected, I've told you, you have to treat this as a court. It's the everyday court in your life. And if you go to the basic rule on how this works to allow you to understand, if you haven't heard it before, I've said this over and over, you object. When you go to court and you make an objection, and those of you who saw Perry Mason, you heard this all the time. They told us how to do it. Those of you that didn't see Perry Mason, you need to go watch. You hear it in some of the better movies and things that they represent a court hearing process. When you object, your claim of objection is meaningless just because you said so. I object. And if you stop right there and you said nothing more, the court says overruled. In other words, you have to bring something that why you're objecting for. Your right to claim the objection has to be presented in the next breath. And what are those? Well, if you go to the rules of evidence, it's the rules of evidence. The things that you have the right to object to have to be stated right after. Let's say one. Let's say the information that's provided has to be relevant. And if you come with information that's irrelevant, there's a motion to strike that in oral form. I object. Irrelevance. The opposition says, no, that's not irrelevant. That is relevant. And the judge, the overseer, the supposed neutral trier of fact says, yeah, you're right, it was relevant. Overruled. So your objection, your claim to an objection means nothing. That as soon as I saw this tribe objected nearly 2 years ago, okay, we have to go look and see what was the quality of this objection. And so I'll just cut to the chase about this. Again, it's a waste of time if you're not paying attention. And a lot of you won't pay attention, I guess, because I've just seen the history now. How many years have I been broadcasting and people can't get this right? I'm going to read the center part of this, which was the answer. One sentence was the answer to me, and it reminded me that I had mentioned this before. That everyone after the fact says that, oh, the Indians objected, and that's good enough. Okay, I want to know the quality of the objection, because there is a quality. I can make a claim for anything. It doesn't mean it's my right to claim, and then it doesn't mean that my right to claim was sufficient. And if you don't start analyzing your problem this way, you're going to be who you are and getting beat down and doing the wrong thing and actually doing criminal things because you think you got it on your side. You claim all the rights you didn't know you didn't have. While you claim rights that you think you do have, but it's not relevant. In the middle of this article, it says Win Young also described some of the significant sites in the area, including 66 villages along the Missouri River, areas with human remains or other cultural artifacts, and sacred prayer sites. Okay, I'll tell you, fair enough. The assertion is fair enough. And so what's the objection is stated. Now, what's the proof? When I go to say something's irrelevant and I make the objection to something that's being submitted that's irrelevant, and then I tell them why, the third-party arbiter normally comes in and says, okay, that's true or not. I'm either overruled in my objection or it's allowed. You have to bring something. And the company immediately asked, because it looks like in all cases here, they really did try a lot hard to stay away from the reservation as best they could. Even though there's arguments one way or the other that it could have been farther, or that wouldn't even answer it, that's not relevant here, because that's another objection without proof. And this is where we go. Where's the evidence of your right to make the objection? When you made the particular objection, what was your supporting proof that those things were existent to be recognized? The very first question in this article coming out of the company's mouth, I think it was the company, that Frey asked if the tribe had maps available that would indicate the sites to avoid. Tribal officials said they did not have maps publicly available. Overruled, folks. No objection, no viable objection. It was their responsibility to bring the maps and all proof. That I found in my first discussion about this, the tribes are using this term sovereignty to be obstinate. And obstinance is not the process. Obstinance is not due process. If I make a claim against your property, I better well, you ought to be making me prove it. If I'm making a claim within my rights to make a claim, I have to state the authority for that and prove that. To come with a claim without the proof, in the moment that you ought to, is not an objection. Doesn't matter whether it was on audio or anything. And this is the thing I'm seeing that really, in a way, I'm getting disgusted about it. Why? Because people are getting hurt for no good reason. That this could have been resolved. At least we wouldn't have to be looking at the failure of the obstinance of the Indians to not produce the evidence I've told you about already. Was not only my view, but also the court had found out in its list of things that happened. And later on in this article, it again references that as well. Again, this was sent out by people that are saying this supports the process that happened that diminished the Indians in North Dakota. Instead of producing the maps, they deferred the production to someone else, a Standing Rock tribe, who wasn't in the meeting, which we've talked about before. They were obstinate. We're sovereign, you're going to deal with us, and if you don't like it, tough. There has been no record actually produced that isn't the case, everywhere that I can find. And I say, so again, my observation of this is strictly limited to what I can find. And nobody brings any actual proof. They bring stated objections, which were not actually objections. Oh, they were claims of an objection, but they were not fortified. Now, why wouldn't the tribes have ready maps marked out how and why you should stay away from here? Why wouldn't they do that? Why aren't we hearing here they did that? I'm upset with them for themselves if they aren't even upset about that. They can't claim objection where they didn't follow with evidence. No, that's the process. You're saying that's the system, so if you use the system to fight the system? No, this is the only thing available to you. Why wouldn't they do that? And what I'm suggesting that if you do that, that would have put a big monkey wrench in the works for this company early on. Why do you vilify or get mad at me or criticize me or don't listen or say the wrong thing, whatever it is you're saying? I don't even get into it. You don't have a better solution here is the problem, and you aren't doing and you're promoting things that you've done that you didn't do. Now I find myself in my mind talking directly to the Indians that are really taking a strong stance, but doing it for the wrong reasons in the wrong place. At the wrong time, actually. All they have to do is produce the map, folks. They don't need to go out in the field. Why didn't they do that? There's some other things. I've talked about them. I've already covered all this. This article was just like reading the first article I read when I started to find out, wait a minute, this whole thing has been set up as a stalking horse for something else. They go through this article. It's almost a regurgitation of the first article I read. They even bring up what the judge said, as I said. The judge ruling with the preliminary injunction last September was that the agency documented dozens of attempts made to consult with Standing Rock Sioux from fall 2014 through the spring of 2016. And yet they brought nothing. No, they stood on their obstinance instead of actually engaging. And I have a feeling I understand why, and I'm going to say it even though it could be very wrong. If the map came out that identified where these sites were and they were there, the company would have been able to avoid it. And the point is that they don't want anybody there. Why? Because there's an agenda. It's not principle and reason and property rights or any of that. If you want to protect water, you engage the system to protect water, not be obstinate. As I said, what was it, the gentleman's name? John Bolenbaugh, has in one video the evidence, if you can prove it, as an offset value in the front end of this that would in fact start to work toward protecting property, water a lot better. That hasn't, I can't see it being put into place. I've been looking around. It's not there. Why am I hearing a bunch of people getting hurt, subjecting themselves to all this, unless it was just to make a show? When all they had to do was produce the evidence of their claim and make it a true objection in the process that was provided for this, so that everybody's interest could actually be heard. And actually, when I think about it, anybody who doesn't agree with me has no place to not agree with me. They got no standing. They got nothing to say. They don't have the proof. I would not let anybody make a claim against my property that couldn't come with the proof of the prima facie evidence of the right of their assertion. And nobody should accept that either. And anybody who's coming in to support this thing on this facts is as deluded as everybody else that thinks that they're standing for something. The due process that's provided has been obstinately denied. The evidence of that is over and over. And this article that was promoted as the evidence of an objection does not fulfill the process nor the law for being a proper objection. Again, you have to do things properly. In this case, it shouldn't be too hard to understand. If you bring no evidence to support your claim, you may not have the claim. And given multiple times to fix that, can't be deemed to be a problem on the government side or the company side. And I'm not saying you don't have it. I'm saying you haven't presented it. For those of you that think otherwise. All the amount of knowledge you think you have on this failed at the time you didn't present the evidence. And anybody that presents, represents and protects the ability to make a claim without proof is really just a closet criminal in my mind. You would be against me if I was someone trying to protect my property and I had the proof and I'm saying, listen, if you got a claim on this, you have to bring the proof, and you don't, then I get 6,000 people coming up on my doorstep because I asked for the proof for your claim that you didn't produce. Until you get your head straight on this one, I am getting less and less sympathetic about what's going on, certainly. I told you I started to wash my hands about it, but because this is instructive, if you folks want to make an objection, you got to make it right. It has to have substance. It's not your opinion on what is. It's not what your feeling is. It's not on what your ancestors said. It would be on the facts of what goes on. You can produce either in any of the accepted forms of evidence under the rules of evidence. Which brings me to the rules of evidence that just got changed on y'all while you're all watching the breads and circuses. I'll move on now. Rule 41 got changed by Act of Congress. And that rule, as this article says, today the FBI, this was a couple days ago, the FBI becomes the enemy of every computer user and every IT security professional worldwide. Rule 41 is a rule of evidence. It allows now the government to come in and ask for a warrant anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. There is no limitation on border now. You think that there's open borders, that you want to keep people from coming in. Folks, the government wants out. And they got it. When did they get it? They got it in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015 in the NDAA. I told you cell walls, borders are important. Jurisdictional boundaries are super important. You're watching back in 14, I identified for you that not only did the United States go extrajudicial when they could get rid of all the due process that you're enjoying right now as the Indians that won't take it up, that they can take away your due process, they can indefinitely detain you, they can do whatever they need to do to create the fraud, to put you in the place, to create you the enemy combatant that you are now declared, which I don't think people still appreciate what I'm telling them here. They destroyed the rule of law by saying they went interjudicial. In that same memo, remember, I reported on, they actually denounced the Lieber Code, so forget all your laws of war. Forget even that oxymoron. The United States government destroyed the Hague Convention on International Law for War. They destroyed due process in the NDAA. The government, the executive is going full-blown on that. The FBI is from the executive. Now has changed the judiciary in a rule that allows it to break down borders worldwide. Now, most of you say it doesn't matter, I got nothing going. I'm telling you, this is a lot bigger problem than you. It's not about you. Get over yourself. Start looking at what's going on here. Now, none of you all that are listening to me are probably able to do it, but there has to be a challenge. Someone may make it. I'm not sure. A constitutionality problem. It used to be, and in this new world, there is no borders. You're under one global governance. If you don't understand what this is starting to do, I told you that about Interpol coming in. That was the first crack starting to show. You're watching all the sci-fi movies of social construct, organization, and depression and oppression coming to bear through this little bitty rule. The FBI has new powers. Powers is an important word. This is not just a privilege or anything. This is a power. You operate from power. You bring evidence of your power, and power is what controls the board. A granted new power. When I talk about grants, folks, you understand the power of the power in the word itself. A granted new power to intrude into any computer anywhere on the globe, instantly changing the FBI from a random law enforcement agency to a global adversary. Now, this is from OPSEC Monkey. I think I might have got this off of Twitter, and I think I might have got it through Barman and Grimner. A global adversary. Law enforcement agencies are expected to be met with open arms and treated as good guys. There's not going to be any good guy treatment of the FBI here, and for good reason. I won't read more. You have to know a simple rule change just perfected more what I've been telling you is going on. You want to talk about the New World Order? I've been showing you how they're putting it. They're building the cage around you, and I hear crickets. And then I get vilified to try or criticized or ignored or whatever when I'm trying to tell you what you really have to do. And all I can figure out is that you really want that on you. You'd rather complain and moan and whatever. You just not do what you need to do because, oh, that's too tough. You don't find a better way. You don't offer a better insight. And I hear the people that step up, they still haven't quite heard what I'm saying on how you approach it so that you don't jeopardize yourself first. I've run across this now the last few weeks. I got to shake my head a little bit. The answers are right there, nice 3 or 4 sentences on how you go about this. If you go and do what I said to go do about certain things, people can't do that. They can't establish the record, or they don't. Not that they can't, they don't. And then they get beat up in their honest and earnest attempt to try and defend themselves against the oppression that's everywhere. So this Rule 41 is after, though, a story I was going to tell you back in July of this year, warning over 100 Tor nodes found designed to spy on deep web users. In other words, as we talked before, the government can set up a node for Tor to be a pass-through server to create the network of Tor, and that creates certain and obvious vulnerabilities. That this is the report before going after the Tor hidden services. The important why I brought this up now, because this was way down the tabs, is that this new rule allows the government to say if you use anonymity, they can presume you to be doing criminal acts. So we are so far beyond due process and judiciary responses and constraints. You're looking at the world of extrajudicial oppression right now. That while you're all with crickets and looking over Trump and whomever that you were doing and denying what I was saying or not doing the things you needed to do, this plan is going day by day in the direction it needs to go without opposition. We can go on and on. That's the software side. We know the hardware side is probably already compromised and going to get worse. So over and over and over. And we keep Silent Weapons of Quiet Wars, we're going to plug ourselves in. Silent Weapons of Quiet Wars is that you have a place to plug in. Protocols of the Elders of Zion is you will, because they know you better than yourself. And you won't listen to someone like myself and take the right action. You'll criticize me. You will make arguments that actually not foundation at all, but you'll speak highly of yourself about that. You're completely clueless, and yet you think you know something. And for those of us that do know something, if I can sound that arrogant, you really look foolish. You really do. And I'm saddened because I don't want you to be foolish, and I want you to be able to understand the reality that you're in and how to work against it. The more of us working against it, the quicker it happens. Just a few. I keep telling you don't maybe understand is just a few of us we're seeing the reflection back of our own words now from people we don't normally communicate with at all. What we do at Jefferson Mining District and the comprehensive nature of the subject matter is reflecting back in a way that never has been before. That's probably a little bit of encouragement I can get when I hear it coming from somebody else and I go, wow, that wasn't said before. That string of words was never said but by us. And I never knew these people, never knew the subject matter they were dealing with, but all of a sudden it's important to people. And because of the perception that Trump's going to be the hero. And I told you we're going to use that perception, I hope, to actually get something done in the law that sits there to stop this oppression. Again, not guaranteed in 100%, but at least start to make the acknowledgement that there was something that this society was supposed to follow that it didn't. It will be a great day when we can see we have accountability for that. You all are responding to the fact of the lack of accountability, and you're not caring about how to go find and how to make that. That's not my problem. My problem it becomes my problem because I get the reflection of that. Without more people doing that and making the excuses, we don't have the mass of people working in the right direction to make this thing go away. So we got, you're not following the rules of evidence, you're not following the rules, you're being obstinate against them, you're not actually understanding what actual objection is and a proper loan or how to properly place it. I've only been asking you to learn that so that you become more effective. I've never denied that the Indians might have a thing to say. I'm disappointed they won't say it right in order to empower that. And then on the other hand, maybe they don't, because with this map not coming out, that shows that's a conspiracy, folks, that to defraud something. Did you get that? That when they don't want to bring the proof of the evidence and they keep pushing the position, they're trying to defraud somebody. Otherwise, they'd bring the proof. Why? It's also their burden. And these rules have been set up because we're not so good to ourselves. If the Indians are willing to defraud somebody, well, we needed some rules to try and show that there was accountability to that. The accountability for defrauding someone would be the non-action for not producing the proof of your claim. And that's what we're talking about. Where's the proof of your claim? You even do this in court. I keep telling you you're living in a continuous court hearing with respect to the government. Or the property rights, or any kind of a right. I'm telling you, you have none, so you have to have all the evidence of how you have it. And it's not on and on. You don't have to tell stories about it. You can find direct statutes which predate the occupation, which it has to honor, that if it doesn't fulfill it, can't move further. And when it does, it can be called a criminal. And if a lot of us were out there talking about how being able to identify this criminality without our opinion, like I can, that if anybody would actually listen to what I'm saying and actually make importance of it, and then make that private to themselves on how they can see it, not because I say it, but because they can see it, then we might start getting somewhere. But if we gotta go around saying just complain about the system, or just claim well, we don't have any rights, or then claim rights that we can't prove, we're all in the same non-functional, dysfunctional boat. And then we'll have arguments against ourselves like we are, and nothing will ever come of it much. That we are kind of behind this thing. We don't understand the dynamic. We aren't far-seeking in our observation in how things down the road might work. We don't know how to put two and two together. We don't know how to connect the dots close. We really are dysfunctional that way. That I've been telling you again, moving on to another study or another fact coming out, that you cannot legalize something. You have to, if you want to get rid of it, you have to decriminalize it. See, immunity for vaccines is legalized. It's a crime actually against you that's been granted license. The legalization of marijuana is the criminalization of it, short of the license that you get from government. So registration is confiscation. They've legalized it. You now have to come into regulation. But this regulation isn't a at the table type of regulation. This is a subjection regulation. And so I told you, I tried to warn you folks off of doing legalization. And so here comes the first of the reports now. We might see coming across more. When I tell you that the Oregon is a pioneer police state, it holds up to here. That Oregon agency charged with accrediting pot labs on verge of collapse. And the danger there is that administration, where administration is required, is going to economically interfere with the growing of marijuana, even recreational, given that there's a law that says if you have more, the part of the law is if you have more than you're supposed to have, you have to somehow give it to those that have the right to sell it. And that all is going to be taxed and regulated. The administrator of a state program charged with making sure marijuana labs are accredited said that the American Health Authority has ignored his pleas and resources and that the agency is on the verge of collapse. See, there's a requirement, and I think it's a pretty good one because I was kind of shocked to hear it, that maybe these growers aren't too fastidious about the pollution, the pesticides, the fungicides that they put on this plant. See, like any other agricultural operation, they want to do, concentrated growing. And to do that, you have to do amendments in pesticides. And they're finding out that a lot of this stuff is no good from the poison standpoint. You even have E. coli up here. Again, it's like anything that you do in processing. They have extra solvents in the extracts. If you didn't know about all this, for those of you that go to dispensaries, you have to understand about this. At the Oregon, because it went legalized, they have to underwrite the quality of it. You have to go through a process of regulation and testing. The problem is this is like an inside track of how they were going to essentially destroy the little producer to enable the monopolies. Was the little guy can't really pay for the tests that need to be done, nor do you have access to the lab. And this is no different than they do for minors. We can't actually get an actual assay done for the type of assays we need. They only do them for commerce side or international code commerce side. And so we see the same problem over and over, that now and I understand, I hear some people yelling, it's not marijuana, it's cannabis that we grow. Okay, that's fine, but you didn't make that distinction. So I understand that. I'm not trying to hit every mark here. I'm trying to show you that when you legalized it, you now subject yourself to actually some protections here, but also a major control structure, which ultimately leads out the little guy and allows the big monopoly that can continue to do this. That they're having a problem with the product getting to the store, the dispensaries, and the price now is going up. And people are being laid off already. This hasn't even been in place since October. And so just a word of the wise here. Go ahead and keep legalizing it. And this is the kind of thing you're going to start seeing. And now what they've also done, but I can grow recreationally. Yeah, be careful. What's the law on that? Make sure you don't have over a pound when you're done. That's what it says. I don't know what you're going to do with that. Watch your extracts. You can't do those. They kept that. See, the money wants that because that's where the extracts is where the pharmaceutical part is, isn't it? So be careful, because once you start growing, you become subject to now new code enforcement that's being developed in all the counties, and the taxation and comes on. And so you've now criminalized that, even that recreational part, if they say you didn't qualify something quite right. And a code enforcement officer doesn't have to tell the truth, and he never gets hurt when he tells a lie. You are going to be in a court somewhere in an administrative hearing with a lawyer, and forced to do so, forced association, in order to defend yourself. So keep legalizing this stuff. You guys didn't see this. I told you it was coming. I told you this was the fact of it. I said, and no word went out contrary to what I was saying. I mean, all words went out contrary to what I was saying, and very few were consistent in any force to keep you all from suffering now this condition that some states haven't seen it, but I think it's just the rollout plan. So we see the first evidence that already the dispensaries are having trouble. The price is going up, even though the supply is just overwhelming. And we now see that there's a problem with the growers putting pesticides in your stuff. So you should actually, if you need it, you should actually just guarantee yourself, like any other organic crop, grow your own. But you shouldn't legalize it. To do that, you should be able to decriminalize it, stop making it a crime, and be off with it. Go on to something new. Is anybody doing this? Is anybody rolling up your sleeves and coming with the facts so you can start doing that for yourself? I don't know. I don't get any emails for that. If you're not, and this is interesting to you and important, I don't know what to say. What are you going to do? Oh, you just go along to get along now. You get what you can. I get enough for me. And you forget what's going on underneath the skin of the absolute abject control that starts to come in, that we're going to see even worse now. Obamacare was the start of how they start to impose upon you state-offered products. So let's not get too far away with how we already see the evidence and we're all crickets to it. Now, I've also talking about with these rules and regulations, we've been talking behind the scenes, trying to get an inroad to the current transition team about how we can eliminate a lot of regulatory rules because they weren't lawfully made. We have an insight into all that. We can free up a lot of the regulation, which we all know eventually boils down pretty quick to the local entrepreneur in the raw materials and production and manufacturing sector, as being a better, if you thought you were free, the regulations show that you're not. Again, you don't have any rights. You have the right to be a slave. I guess the only right you have is to be that slave, unless you know how to avoid the law by challenging the authorities, which is what we do all the time. See, we don't go into the system to use its rules. We say that system can't attach. Or we say that system hasn't done enough to be an authority to attach. And so if you're not listening to that, you're missing the whole point on how this works and how easily it works. That we've been looking really carefully at going after these, making a presentation to affect what we've been doing. And so I've had to look at who the players are, and I haven't really, sometimes I don't have the time to do it all, but I've been keeping a keen eye as to who are we dealing with, and I wanted to point out who it might be that we're dealing with. I noticed and could see quickly that on the Clinton side we had at least a known Jesuit in Cain, and Cain killed Abel and that kind of sort of thing. And then I told you that I'd be cautious because it looked like they were amassing the Jesuit influence was amassing in the Trump camp. Well, it's turning out, and this is important, as I'll tell you why it becomes important. In one regard, I don't care, because I don't care who's in an office. If there's a black and white law and obligation and duty that must be fulfilled, that's what I care about, that it gets fulfilled. And if I don't see that it's happening and the law is black and white, then I ought to have a remedy in accountability. And one of our main things is we don't have that right now. That's why I say you have no rights until you get your accountability. You're in a state of war. And it's up to us to get that back. At least I feel it is. Some of you would argue with me. That we find out that one of the guys that I was talking about last week, this Steve Bannon, says joining Goldman sucks is like joining the Jesuits. And this was in a recent report that he said that back in 2012. And the reason why I'm focusing on Jesuits at all, because of what it connects to and what ends up happening to be the last story here in the next two stories that becomes a concern for what we're doing, because we sued to enjoin sustainable development as a treason against the United States and all y'all. And so if we're going to go to an administration and we're going to discuss this, we are going to be going against people who may not necessarily want to agree with that injunction. We have to be very clear on how we approach this problem. That who you deal with becomes very important here. So Goldman Sachs gets recognition by Steve Bannon as being like joining the Jesuits, and he actually was stating that in a somewhat of a positive way. So now we have players. Steve Bannon, who's now in the cabinet, so until once he's approved, the Goldman Sachs is also in the cabinet now, and the only question is, what about the Jesuits? Well, then comes up a story all at the same time again, all right the same days, the day before that, Trump's Jesuit Catholic transition team. So I said Catholic, now Jesuit Catholic, because we're going to go to the next story here in a moment. But we see the list, and of the breakdown of all the people involved, we have Roman Catholic allegiances and particularly Jesuit training in about every one. In fact, Mike Pence describes himself as an evangelical Catholic, which when I saw that term, I said, that's a Jesuit. In fact, a lot of these people are trained at Georgetown University. And what I noticed as I was reading this, I hadn't known and I hadn't paid attention to what faith Trump was, if any. Had absolutely no interest to find out at the time until I started seeing this next story, but found out, and I didn't know, and there's not much information that I could find immediately. So I happened to see a video, and in the video they were pulling up to the very first church service they were invited to, which I thought was actually through Pence. In fact, they show the screenshot of where the name of the church, and it's a Presbyterian church. And so they go to their first service is with a Protestant church. So that's a Catholic church that just sees it a little differently. And they had the Martin Luther schism, which I've talked about behind the Woodshed, which I now believe might have been it was a psyop. It was a 500-year psyop to get the church split, to create the division, to create the momentum and the direction they needed, and then to bring it back. And we'd heard last year I was reporting for 3 or 4 weeks about the treaty between the Pope and the Protestants, Martin Luther group, the Lutherans, the Protestants, all of them, that there were a treaty to come back together, going to be happening at 2017. Remember all that? That all of a sudden this becomes very relevant of who we have sitting and making decisions, that we will have to speak about, not speak about more than, speak to their sentiment, their sensibilities, such that they may or may not be. Why that becomes important is if their faith now is tied in behind the scenes, and they have a Jesuit in position now in the United States of America and in the Vatican as the Pope and the Black Pope, which we've heard was out of Venezuela. Let's go back to, just in memory, that I told you back in September 2015. Remember what the Pope did about sustainable development, his embrace of Agenda 2030, his declaration that y'all are human animals and that they have the possession of you all. That our position about sustainable development and things like climate change and carbon taxes and transportation modes and the subversion of your government, the subversion of your property and the methods of dispute resolution that they do that by, and your arbitrations, all that they use to subvert you, is all what we're talking about that the Pope agrees should happen to you. That we now see the connection between the current coming administration, given it's all, it's sufficiently covered. It doesn't matter if they don't even bring a couple people in. That talking to this expressed antagonist to climate change with a group of people that are actually have a higher authority in them to have to acknowledge in the Pope makes this very next story very important for all y'all to understand about looking to the future on what the dynamic might be. The Pope offers warning to Trump. Do not back away from Paris climate deal. The Paris Climate Accord, which on some instances, on some fronts, is already failing, but notwithstanding that, there's still a press for it. The Paris Climate Accord is all about limiting, capping greenhouse gas emissions, CO2. Parenthetically here it says CO2, but I've told you it's water vapor actually, so there's a lie already, but let's go on. A believed man-made contributor to climate change in order to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius by the year 2010. Now, I know all y'all that are suffering 12, 15, 20 degree below temperatures right now, below normal, are laughing. Hawaii getting upper region heavy snows in right now that happen, but not really regularly. In other words, it's still within the variance I keep telling you about the world sits in. The agreement also aims to stop emitting greenhouse gases by 2060. Here's a date to be careful of, but they have a 2050 plan. And if you were listening on UCY or URLM on UCY to Ron Stebbins, he was talking about a guy who is involved with a carbon pathway for 2050. So these people are still on the plan. They're still moving toward an agenda that you are not a part of, you are the antagonist to, and that they're going to win unless you can interfere with that in proper ways, that the Pope is telling the president-elect and his administration, don't dismiss the climate deal, which involves agreeing to sustainable development. All right, so this is a long-term plan. If you're not that far ahead and understanding these people are working toward there, we're going to miss it all. We're going to be behind, and they're going to take this thing down. Was the news that made the Pope saying that to Trump, made his his team's affiliation to the Catholic Church very, very important. Even if I don't go to a negative side, which has all other connotations we can actually look through and rummage about in. That there's other, again, the dimensions in this world warfare are many, and the power of that is beyond any one of us, certainly, and maybe all of us, to stop. This is beyond us. That what we need to do is so important that we, working together, become the synergistic power to stall it, forestall it, so that we don't suffer even worse oppressions than what we are starting to see now. So, again, they try to show here, like I was identifying, that the Pope has an opinion on climate, that he professed to be a scientist, but we found out that he was not. He's probably one of these conservation scientists. He's not infallible, firstly, and secondly, he's not a real scientist, where he misidentifies that even if it was something that CO2 was the main cause. And so we have a bunch of problems that when the Pope come up to tell the president-elect, don't disregard that, it became important on what underlying faith and power that his faith puts in another became very important. And so I hope you appreciate maybe the hidden problem right in our face about this. And looking toward how you're going to approach the problem requires, again, we have evidence. We just don't have our opinions about it. You have to have the evidence. You have to show these people down immediately. And then you got to find that duty in the black and white that they're supposed to honor and have it ready and apparent. And if only a few of us do it, we're only going to have a few things going on, and the amoeba works and takes ground in other places. If we all start understanding this point and we stop our excuses against not doing something, we have a very high likelihood of not only doing what appeared to be an impossible feat in people becoming aware that there was a problem in this election cycle, and maybe even having a clue of what that really is, opposed to what we thought it was. We might have a chance here to back these things off and get us into a more productive sense. I say sense only because I'm not sure who actually pulls the strings in the world market if we don't also extract ourselves from the so-called private money, which is under public acknowledgement and control. And I mean, this is the public-private partnership that was started back in 1913 with the Fed and the Congress, and working out how we're going to be separate and distinct from that. And we've got plans on that, but there's just not enough people that want to come on with a proper understanding and foundation to be able to understand how to start to look at the problem, to then be able to be part of the solution against certain parts of it. I say solutions advisedly. It's only a solution to that extent that you can get it to work. It doesn't necessarily fix everything else. So I hope you're listening here. Those of you that, we really need people to roll their sleeves up and find out what really is going on. Not do it like I've been explaining in the beginning, where you think you're going on. Now your heart's in the right place, but you don't have any actual idea of how to impart that to the world in an objective way, which in my mind, the way that works is really good. In other words, that open due process of evidence is all important. That the process that you see, the stalking horse condition, and the transparent process that continues it and fortifies the negative part of that is what you need to see. You need to see the transparent. And the only way you do that is you insist on the rules of evidence being enforced. So you require someone prove their claim. So this is the same thing I'm talking here, only we're now going to go through a filter with the administration. They may be constrained by their faith without them telling you. And how are you going to deal with that? For those of you that are thinking into the future on action, I give that to you. The rest of you, you need to learn the basics. Don't try to go to those other areas. You're not going to work it outright. You're going to try and claim things that you have a right, because you're a darned American with rights, and you're not quite getting it yet. Even if you were, you're an occupied people. Figure that one out. And it gets deeper. And I've only been touching the surface on some of that, and we don't even get to the other stuff. I never have been able to move on, and in the last few weeks have been telling me I can't. You're just not, as a listenership and action and listening to what I've been saying, you're not actually applying what I'm saying. You're heartfelt addressing a harm that's hit you, but you're doing it in an incorrect way. And so far, anybody that I've been able to explain the more proper way has acknowledged that would have been better. And so we have a little bit more to figure out about what I'm talking about in properly applying even that. Not just proper application, but properly understanding and applying what I'm saying to the proper application. And so why has this all become important about this climate change and this carbon deal and the Paris Climate Accord? This is one of the oppressions that are using as a tool against you to confine your activities. And this climate deal talks about greenhouse gas emissions, which talks to carbon sequestration, which is the plan I was talking to you about, that I got a link from Ron Steffen that I'm going to have to do a rundown on. That there's a guy working until 2050 now on this carbon sequestration in a different pathway, a deeper one, an ultra carbon collection scheme. So you see in the future they're getting more and more oppressive. If you don't step up now, it became important even actually back in July when we heard that Canada, Canuckistan, is to implement a national carbon price. In other words, that carbon market that we heard about that was being all kind of defunctized, being kind of beaten down, is still sitting there running, and now Canada is going to give it value. And this is an important point that you need to know. This is what is already implemented across the border, is soon to be borderless when this climate deal continues to be a uniform condition around the globe, championed by the Pope, by people who believe that he's their leader, beyond them, that the carbon sequestration problem that Ron Steffens was showing is coming from Canada, although the guy that's actually in the programs in San Francisco, which now brings up, what did I say before, the green religion coming from Gorbachev to the Presidio area and having the Presidio trust properties that they started to use land and public land sequestered away for these purposes to enforce the biodiversity treaty, the sequestration, the problems that they conceive, And so you see a connection, international connection between Canada and San Francisco, no different than we see in our state treaty compacts between the Canuckistan, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and California that are completely illegal, but they still do them. So this is not that the Pope comes in and tells the President-elect, don't do that, and the President-elect has some allegiance to that Pope. Do not underestimate that we may see a pretty quick moving here despite the statements we've seen, despite even again today and this morning that Trump is saying everything that I said is going to be fulfilled. That's a scary statement, because if he said what I heard, he's already made plans that I can see that that's not going to happen, that maybe what he was saying, we're going to see the meaning, the dual meaning in words that you didn't define from him before you listened to them, that he's going to tell you how that works now. That I see very big danger. It's the borders are being knocked down by regulation, by intergovernmental agreements that there will be no accountability for, and so that will allow the criminal to get around it. Now, so these carbon markets are international. That brings up what? The IMF. That brings up the World Bank and all these things that are all sitting there already running. The engines are running full steam on this. That I wanted to bring up a long time ago. These people that you're under, that everyone becomes subject to, are here to see their character. And we see a long while back a report. Now we get to the Canadian markets is all tied to the IMF, and this IMF chief Lagarde to stand trial for a $400 million payout case. And IMF chief Christine Lagarde must stand trial for her role in a $400 million pound payout case while she was French finance minister back in 2008. Lagarde is accused of negligence, which resulted in the misuse of public funds by a third party. Now, in our country, United States, we would say, well, she's innocent until proven guilty. The problem is, in an official like this, in a critical place like this, has the obligation and duty to be beyond the appearance of impropriety. That the mere charge becomes her burden at all. That these are the kinds of people that we're dealing with, if we hadn't noticed it before, that are willing to get very close, if not cross the line, and think they can get by with it. These are the people that are running the decisions that run your world, that run these carbon things, carbon taxation, carbon sequestration projects, all these lies that allow conservation scientists to agree that this is even a thing, that the scientist and the Pope says, oh, it's still a thing. And these are just these are advocates and lobbyists for crime against you. And so we have to understand who we are dealing with, I believe. And if you don't, you don't know the battlefield. You don't know how deep this can go. IMF's managing director, Christine Lagarde, on how to implement sustainable development goals was then followed up as a story report that I'd found at the time. If you don't think this is all connected, what I found here this week with the Pope telling Trump, you better not. Remember, the Pope made a big historic visit to Congress, something he'd never done. Gets to the ground, kisses the ground of America. If you don't think there's symbolic truth about what's going on, you better start paying attention, and then you better start figuring and formulating a plan in knowledge, the proper actions against what's going on. Why I keep telling you your grants are even against that authority as a dishonor to it. So you have a power, if you understand what I've been saying, to even address that. On Friday, September 25th, the United Nations formally adopted the Sustainable Development Goals and SDGs. The SDGs are a set of 17 goals aimed at lowering global poverty, hunger, inequality, and addressing environmental challenges. You notice how lately I'm having trouble reading? I think I'm going down, folks. It's getting to me. Ahead of the UN Sustainable Development Summit, where the SDGs are adopted, the Global Economy and Development Program at Brookings-hosted International Monetary Fund, IMF, Managing Director Christine Lagarde, for a discussion of the IMF's role in implementing the post-2015 development agenda and the SDG goals. If you don't think this is all connected, here it is, another story. And someone who is agreeable to getting beyond the appearance of impropriety and even engaging in conduct that it was enough to probable cause to believe a crime had been done, is one of the working people that the Pope associates with, if nothing else. But it's more. And so we have to understand we're not dealing with some good people. And for those of you that don't think you can do without some objective basis and rules that have been established for good reason why we're here, you're going to miss it as well. You're going to be a part of the problem. It'll come on to you what we've been talking about. It's going to come on faster because there's no opposition, and we can so quickly destroy it if we just understood. We just create a new thing. We expect differently, and we bring accountability to these people that will be in offices and just try to destroy us. And we can quickly find that out when they try to ignore us and run away, which is actually happening in a lot of places. So it's not hard to get these people to run away. IMF admits disastrous love affair with Euro and apologizes for the Greek immolation of Greece, bringing out here these people are not only criminals and don't care they get close to looking like it, even though they have the duty is to not even have the appearance of an impropriety. They're willing to watch a country go down and go up in flames. They're willing to make a relationship become more important than the people of a country and the sovereignty of a country. IMF admits disastrous love affair with Euro and apologizes for the immolation of Greece. How do you apologize for the conflagration that used to be a country? These people are willing to do this and look back and say, oh, we burnt that forest down. Sorry. And continue to go forward because they don't care about you. They've got their plan, and they're going to stick to the plan. And if you don't have one, you're going to lose. Hot on the way to one world order currency, IMF will study expanded use of SDR. I believe, as the story I reported, I wanted to remind you, this is the pathway that they use to control the countries that somebody like Trump and the administration listening to the Pope said you better not, is going to be susceptible to this pressure. In other words, for all y'all that thought he was a savior, he is not. And for those of you that are in the belief, there's only one savior, and it's neither the Pope nor Trump. And so we better start learning the hierarchy of things, notwithstanding anybody's lack of belief in it or not. These people are using these authorities to impress upon people a power that, in my mind, certainly does not exist, and yet they get people to believe it. Don't underestimate that half the population of the United States just put someone in office who agrees to their demise through the policies of the people he will be required by his own faith to not disregard. Remember what they did to a king in 1213. He abdicated his entire kingdom. That included y'all over there in Britain to the Pope because he didn't think he was going to heaven. If you don't think it gets wild, quick, and weird, that's what goes on. The SDR, I told you, is a currency. These people that are wielding lack of due diligence, lack of neglect, lack of the appearance of neglect, involving themselves in relationships that are beyond their duties, are the people that are wielding this SDR currency that we talked about that China now kicked into. And I haven't tracked that, but with the markets fluctuating and things going on in certain movements, I've been wondering how much effect that's been going on. It did do something. That if we don't figure out how we're supposed to rise up and stop this nonsense against us, it will take us over. With regard to these votes and getting the proper people in, we haven't seen that necessarily proof of it yet. I suspect maybe they were very cautious to be able to cover it. Again, that one vote, the one technique that gentleman found, they could actually do the votes, count the votes wrong, and you could never, ever, ever find the clues of that. Pretty much told me that we're not going to ever know. They could do it. But at one time in our history, there was a way to stop this corruption, to stop the ballot stuffing and whatever, and the control and the counting. But it took people to get involved, and I'm not advocating this because it took a very special condition, but I am advocating you understanding that it's there, and where it might go, if what they might actually charge us to do, require us to do, that you're going to have an answer for, but it's going to have to be something that you take into consideration about the ultimate power of the people. In this case, it turns out well enough. But I don't advocate it. I just want people to remember that when we get corruption so high, we have to take the controls. One way you do it, it's like, as example, 70 years ago, World War II vets took up arms against corrupt cops and ran them out of town. Now, this was the Battle of Athens, and establishment, political corruption, and election rigging have been so commonplace. The stunning collusion and fraud perpetrated by the Democratic National Committee this year revealed several document leaks seemed virtually inconsequential to the vast swaths of the voting public. To some, however, the coordinated plot to install Hillary Clinton as a Democratic nominee constituted an unfavorable breach of faith, if not an outright criminality. I want to speak past all that. I want to show you that this has happened in history, and there were some people at the time who directed their energy in a certain particular way where they did have the principle and foundational right, which I do not see down in the DAPL, in the Dakota Access thing, where the veterans are now showing up. Not that to support something that they see as a good cause, but that there was supposed to be things done that have never, ever been done, and yet there's a continuing claim of a right, even though they were given the chance to prove it. They never, ever have. And that, I think, is a violation. That is not peaceful, and that's not reason, and it's not proven. But to those who believe such malfeasance is beyond resolve, perhaps a revisit to the Battle of Athens on its 70th anniversary will offer some perspective. We'll go on to it more. Just wanted to acknowledge it. I wanted to show you that there's people in the country that will stand up. I ask you to become very principled. Do not do what the Oath Keepers have done and we identified. They have good hearts maybe, but they are not very well understanding of what the actual law is and their implications. And I'm saying that in the causation side, as I found out for absolute certainty. It wasn't right down in an association meeting. One of the guys that represented the Oath Keepers tried to tell the miners that what he wanted to have done to protect, so they could protect them. And I said, but that won't protect the miners. That's going to get you into more trouble. He wasn't too happy with hearing what the truth of the law would have allowed to solve his problem. And so that didn't resolve the problem. He stormed out. He was going to tell us what to do, and it was going to be contrary to the law and the actual implementation of law. That I'm suggesting to you that no matter what your honor is, no matter what your oath was as an oath keeper, you better start understanding what the law actually, how it actually works, so you don't walk yourself into some troubles. Now, he could have done it the more correct way, and I offered to help him in that, but he refused, which then showed me he was on an agenda. It's another, he's using his bearing, his flag, his oath to cover for really what I think is a deception. And so be very careful on when you take the actions, that it is the principled action. And so I have another link here, the Battle of Athens, American History Lives at American Heritage was the website. And it goes through the discussion about the Tennessee confrontation in the 1940s to bring back some credibility and integrity to the voting. Now, we've got a different world today, literally, and so we've got to be very cautious. But it does give us a memory of how to, what our obligations and duties are ultimately at some point. Now, you go out like an Occupy movement, it ain't going to work. Even today, you even go out like, if you look at that and look very carefully what they did, I don't think we would last very long. All the veterans would last very long, even given the right perspective. And so it's another memory of what happened in the past, where people had to stand up in the principle and doing the right thing against the authorita, which was elected officials who you find are doing wrong. Now you'll see also why when I tell you we have record of the local the local county officials, or at least the law enforcement and the judges, doing worse than malfeasance, and yet there's only one or two of us that can execute that. Will not be the answer with respect to what you see had to happen at the Battle of Athens. and why, once you find out that you don't have any rights that you can't enforce, and that the government system is not there to do it, no matter what their constitutional claim is. I'm a constitutional sheriff. If they don't act underneath the obligation and duty, and you don't have a remedy against that, you have to look at that and take that into consideration before you take an action. Now, we went up and did up what we could do, and now we have to think about how do we proceed in the face of unaccountable lawlessness beyond malfeasance. Where you don't have a condition of a Battle of Athens where the veterans actually understand what their law and their oath meant, and they actually do where and how they're supposed to. And I'm glad I saw what I did with the Oath Keepers, or at least one representative, because I would have not thought that that was possible. But we can have, despite our at least if I don't put any negative on the interest, we can have a wrong thinking, a wrong thought in us that gives us over to what we think is proper action, which is not actually going to be that way, or get us what we are expecting to get. And so it's very important that we identify these things for ourselves. And again, that's why I say don't take my opinion. Go to the black and white. Learn what this is. Don't take your prejudice of what you believe is, as I've tried to identify for you in many places over time. Don't take the prejudice that you see. Look at what it's really telling you, and really sit back and think of how the context. I could not have come to some of the realizations I have now by just reading the Constitution until after I started to apply the mining law and utilizing what those statements in the Constitution meant as they were applied to what the Congress did through them. It wasn't just the reading, is that you see the example of how they're used that allows you to use them to reinforce what you're going to state. In other words, you see the one provision for the Congress can make the disposition of property. Well, that on its own doesn't mean much until you see it executed in the enabling acts for the Western states. That's where it becomes an obligation and duty. That becomes a contract, implied or expressed. That becomes property. And if you don't look at it that way and support it with that first constitutional step, but come from the act, you're not going to do it right. And so again, this imposition I was getting, I'm going to get back a little bit to the imposition that might be on us, that causes us to not function as high as we want, but they will, but it's promoted to us to tell us that it's on its way here. Together with this, we see the interference with vaccines, and we see now the study that indicates that. We see the study of the ant colony, the epigenetic, the real-time genetic change and transmutation that happens with the imposition of interaction with chemicals in your environment. We now have another news here. A sprinkling of neural dust opens door to electroceuticals. Electroceuticals. UC Berkeley. This is the heart of the hub of the nemesis here, folks. UC Berkeley. Engineer. This is who brings up all the policy and the gurus for sustainable development and global governance policies. UC Berkeley engineers have built the first dust-sized wireless sensors that can be impregnated in the body, bringing closer to the day when a Fitbit-like device could monitor internal nerves, muscles, or organs in real time. Because these batteryless sensors could also be used to stimulate nerves and muscles, the technology also opens the door to electroceuticals to treat disorders such as epilepsy, or to stimulate the immune system, or tamp down inflammation. So let me stop there and just add, or become a monitoring device for you, actually get into your brain and start up processes in your brain to interfere with enzymes, to cause enzymes to be created that you don't need, to overcharge them, to interfere with neural connections and conductions. So they give us the good side, yet you can see with all the technology we had before that they're working to hurt you, and they mean to. They treat you like the animal. That I look at this stuff anymore, even though part of me is just a wonder what we do. I no longer wonder why they may be doing it, and it's really not a cool thing. And so we have to be aware. There comes a day when we walk through a dust, and very shortly thereafter we don't even know we're not really functioning correctly, We're doing things like we were told the ant colony would when it was foreign chemicals were introduced into it, and they changed roles, they changed identity, they changed services, what they did for the colony, but they were no less part of the colony and being controlled from an outside environmental stimulus. So when you look at the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act, be careful when you look at environment. Man's environment may include these government-controlled, very cool-sounding things that they tell you is going to help you, but in fact they're using it to go in the direction they are, which is complete control and surveillance of society and control of the behaviors of society, of people in society. MI5, a mind-reading unit, foils potential terrorist attack. Was a long-time story back. Up to 7 potential terrorist attacks across Britain have been uncovered and stopped, according to past year of special MII unit that reads the minds of would-be attackers, the agency says. Now, we can go through, read all this. They do these algorithms, they do these studies, but how much easier will they be able to fabricate any kind of thought in you when they can control your thoughts by these electroceuticals that is going on? They can actually create the data streams that they're given the proof that shows that you are someone that they claim that you are. They can actually get you to take actions which would lead up to certain things, if not do the action that would cause you to be that. I'm not talking here to scare you. I'm trying to tell you the direction that we leave unopposed is not a direction that we are at liberty to allow. These people mean business. The Rule 41 extends no border. The globe is one big global governance system powered by the United States military, and anything they use underneath the terror and extrajudicial dropping of all international law is not a joke. So we have a couple of fronts we have to fight: local, getting back our local lives, and then what they're doing to the external. Remember, federal FBI is only federal. They're not all powerful. I've told you how we've defeated in principle their authority by showing that they can violate the law too through using the code that they are subject to. What am I saying? For those of you that have heard it before, want to hear it, and want to go down and look, it's Title 18 USC Section 3 and Section 4. If you tell someone on Section 4 and they don't do anything about it, they violate Section 3 as an accessory. That's what you can start bringing. If you don't have accountability, no one pushes for it, it doesn't matter. And so, it's up to y'all. I'm trying to tell you it's all here. We don't have to be helpless, but we're allowing ourselves to be, and we're coming to a time in the future that technology is coming to take away our ability. And I just want you to consider that as we move on. And if you think you escaped, I'll just guarantee you that your little ones aren't. Your little ones aren't. And another little thing tied together, a new wireless hack can unlock 100 million Volkswagens. Again, this touches Bitcoin, this touches anything digital, anything that's got security problems, but more importantly, tied to the electroceuticals. If they can hack this and they import electroceuticals into you, they can hack you. So consider this. Yeah, okay, and I'm maybe sounding a little bit tinfoil hatty, but it's all come on us here, folks. The truth of what I've said over the last few years and seen quite a long time before that. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope something today gets you invigorated enough to do better and do proper, and so that we can really become formidable in the way that I know we are once we organize up ourselves and solve our problems and work to evidence the crimes around us and then address accountability. Grimner, thank you for the space at reallibertymedia.com, at the Blogcaster and the archives. Folks, it's all free to you. Donate to RLM. Again, thank you, Grammy Mary, for the Spreaker account. Lets us go broadcast there and simulcast. I can upload to that. Jules at UCY, thank you for all you do and your podcast and pastcasts throughout the week. And the terrestrial broadcasters, I do appreciate it. And Bo Diddy and Grimner at the freedomsnetwork.com, social network. Just contribute, folks, where you can. I hope we could use these as tools to get together to do more and do better. So I'm available, markonthebeast.yahoo.com as normal, and I'll be here next week, tech diffs or nature willing.
Well,
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.
This is Ozzy Skateboard.